Hey everyone, Kay from Legacy of Lore here. Today we're talking about the time travel in Avengers Endgame. This video will be broken up into parts. First, why time travel exists in Endgame. Then, how time travel is discovered in Endgame. Third, the rules of time travel as described in Endgame. Fourth, how these rules appear to be broken in Endgame. And lastly, I'll cover some miscellaneous points that are related to the discussion of time travel in Endgame. First, why does time travel exist in Endgame? From a storyteller's perspective, Thanos won in Infinity War. He succeeded in snapping away half of the universe's population. At the beginning of Endgame, we also learn that he used the stones to destroy the stones. So, in the reality that our heroes are in, the Infinity Stones no longer exist. However, our heroes need the stones to reverse what Thanos has done. They are the only way to reverse the snap. Our heroes need to retrieve the Infinity Stones from the only place they still exist, in the past. How does time travel come about in Endgame? Scott Lang returns from the quantum realm through some rat-related shenanigans early in Endgame. As he goes out into the world and finds out what has happened in his absence, he realizes that from his perspective, the last 5 years have passed in a subjective 5 hours, and a plan begins to form. He goes to the Avengers base where he finds Black Widow and Captain America and tells them about his plan to use the quantum realm to travel back in time. The group goes to see Tony, who refuses to help them because he won't risk losing what he has gained in the past 5 years, a family. Ultimately, however, Tony cannot keep his mind from working on the problem, and he tinkers away at the problem until he figures it out. The shape he uses to create a way to safely travel through time is a Mobius strip, a shape that has only one surface that ends where it begins. And this is where I take a moment to discuss how absolutely amazing this little detail is. How it echoes how the MCU starts and ends with Tony Stark, with Iron Man. I would also like to point out just how amazing the character development shown here is. Tony, despite being happy and content with what he has, cannot keep himself from helping others, even though he wants to. Something that drove his creation of Iron Man and was cemented as a core part of his personality over the course of the MCU films. Even as he helps them travel back in time, though, Tony tells Captain America that his priorities have shifted.
My priorities. Bring back what we lost? I hope, yes. Keep what I found? Have to, at all costs.
Pepper understands his drive to help and that it does not take away from his care for his family, an indication of how their relationship has matured, and does not discourage him from solving the problem to time travel or taking part in the time heist. However, getting back to the point, time travel is created from an idea from Scott Lang, realized by the brilliant genius of Tony Stark. What are the rules of time travel in Endgame? The film spends some time setting up the rules for time travel within its continuity. One cannot change one's own present or future by changing the past, contrary to most popular culture. Instead, changing the past creates a sort of alternate reality, a new stream of time that diverges from the reality of our protagonists, and one can return to one's own unchanged timeline. The writers of Endgame go out of their way to have their characters highlight these rules to clarify the situation and close up many of the difficult and awkward possibilities that make time travel such a problematic topic, including the grandfather paradox and other theoretical loops and paradoxes of all kinds. How are these rules broken in Endgame? So, in Endgame, our team travels back in time to retrieve the Infinity Stones. Bruce Banner manages to convince the Sorcerer Supreme to give him the Time Stone by promising that they will return the stones to the exact place and time at which they were taken. Specifically, that they will return the time stone to her, as to erase the timeline that removing the stone will create, and telling her that Doctor Strange willingly handed the time stone to Thanos in the timeline Bruce came from. True to their word, they sent Captain America back to return the stones after they had undone what Thanos had done and defeated the past version of Thanos that had returned to the current day MCU timeline thanks to that timeline's Nebula. At the moment of Steve's expected return, he does not appear. Looking around, they discover an old man sitting on a bench nearby. It turns out to be their Steve, who claims that he decided to remain in the past after returning the stones and lived out his life with Peggy Carter. This is, of course, the most obvious paradox of the film. This appears to blatantly break the rules they had established for time travel within the continuity of the film itself. The paradox is that the past he ends up in is different to the past that he lived through due to his presence from a later time, and therefore it must be an alternate timeline, and he could not have been on the bench of our protagonist's main timeline. Or Steve did not change history enough to create a separate timeline, which seems nearly impossible, since he interacts with people close to his past self and important to the way that the past played out. This would also mean that there are two Captain Americas at any given point of the timeline of the MCU since the events of Captain America the First Avenger. In both these cases, it means that Captain America sat through multiple near apocalyptic events and did absolutely nothing. Tangential thoughts. Other questions are raised, such as how did Cap put the Space Stone back into the Tesseract? My answer to this is simply that it doesn't necessarily have to be put back into the Tesseract. He returned the stone to its previous place and time, but not necessarily in the same condition that they took it in. This does, however, raise questions of whether the events from Avengers Assemble to Thor Ragnarok would then remain the same despite the change, or whether another timeline had been formed, and if so, whether the new timeline is worse or better than the one we are familiar with. The use of the Infinity Stones, Natasha's death, and Tony's death all raise questions as well, such as, why don't they bring back Natasha by snatching her from another timeline like they, admittedly inadvertently, did with Gamora? Is it possible? Does the fact that her death was a sacrifice for the Soul Stone somehow keep them from doing this? One comment on this would be that even though we have a Gamora back, she is not the same Gamora we knew. Our Gamora is still dead, and the new Gamora would not end up entirely the way ours did, since she cannot go through the same life experiences as her original counterpart. Could Doctor Strange have used the Time Stone to bring Tony Stark back to life? Arguably, yes. But perhaps a death at the hands of all the Infinity Stones cannot be reversed through other means, including a single stone. Why could the Hulk or Captain Marvel not use the new gauntlet, the Iron Gauntlet, to bring back Tony Stark? This one is the one that's bothering me the most. The film has, however, established that it is not possible to bring Natasha back using the Infinity Stones. Perhaps in the same way, Tony's death cannot be reversed since it was caused by using the stones. I would love to hear your thoughts on this one and anything else you feel I overlooked with regards to this video. Anyway, those are my thoughts on the time travel in Endgame. What would you like me to do a video on next? Please consider liking the video and subscribing. Click the bell icon if you would like a heads up when future videos go live. Until next time.